You made it through security. Your boarding pass is scanned. You're holding a coffee thinking the stressful part is over. Then an agent stops you. Not because you missed your flight, not because you brought something obviously banned, but because the carry-on you've used for years suddenly doesn't pass. In seconds, your trip changes. Your suitcase is pulled aside. The sizer says no. Your bag is opened in front of strangers. You're stuffing clothes into another bag while the line keeps moving and everyone pretends not to stare. And that's exactly why 2026 feels different. This is no longer about bad luck or one overly strict employee. This is the new travel reality: fuller flights, tighter overhead space, stricter carry-on checks, more attention on battery-powered items, and less patience for the things travelers used to get away with. The bag that worked last year may fail this year. The item you packed 100 times may suddenly become a problem. And the rule you thought nobody enforced may be the one that costs you money, time, or your seat-side peace of mind. In this video, we're going to walk through the carry-on rules that are catching travelers off guard in 2026, using the same core guidance from TSAFAA and airline practice, but in a way that is simple, practical, and impossible to ignore. Because smart travelers are no longer the ones who pack the most. They're the ones who understand what the system will flag before the airport does. And the first trap starts with something almost everyone thinks they already figured out: carry-on size. Number 1. Carry-on size and why old bags are suddenly failing. Here's the first mistake catching people off guard in 2026: trusting a bag just because it worked before. You've flown with that suitcase for years. It fit in the overhead bin before. It passed at the gate before. So you roll into the airport calm, assuming nothing has changed. But then the airline places it into a sizer frame. And suddenly, the bag that always felt close enough is no longer close enough. That is the shift travelers are feeling now. TSA mainly cares about what is inside the bag. Airlines care about the outside, its full dimensions, where it fits, and whether it can move through boarding without slowing everything down. And that means your carry-on is not judged by memory. It is judged by the frame in front of you. For many major airlines, the rough standard still sits around 22 by 14 by 9 inches, including wheels, handles, hard edges, bulging pockets, and expansion zippers. And that last detail is where people get trapped. The inch you ignore at home is often the exact inch the sizer notices. A bag can look perfectly normal in your bedroom and still fail at the gate on a full flight. And once that happens, the decision is no longer yours. You may be forced to gate check it, pay an unexpected fee, and quickly pull out your laptop, medication, or valuables while people line up behind you. That's not just inconvenient. It changes the emotional tone of the entire trip before you even board. So the lesson is simple: stop trusting old success. Before you fly, measure the full outside of the bag exactly as the airline will see it. Not the marketing label, not the memory of past trips. The real bag, fully packed with everything sticking out included. And if your suitcase is right on the edge, don't treat that as safe. In 2026, safe means leaving yourself margin. Because once your bag barely fits, it already feels one step away from failing. Number 2. Carry-on weight, and the rule people thought airlines would never enforce. For a long time, many travelers focused only on size. If the bag looked small enough, they assumed they were safe. But in 2026, that assumption is becoming expensive. Because on more routes, especially international ones, weight matters too. And for many travelers, this is the rule that feels the most unfair. After all, a bag can fit the size limit perfectly and still be rejected simply because it is too heavy. That is where frustration turns into panic. You packed carefully. You followed the dimensions. You brought only what you thought you needed. Then your bag goes onto a scale, and suddenly you are over the limit by just a few pounds. Now you are standing there trying to decide what to remove, what to wear, what to move into a personal item, and what to leave behind. And the worst part is this many people never prepared for that moment because they assumed weight checks were rare. Sometimes they were. But when flights are full, boarding is tighter, and enforcement gets stricter. Rare is no longer the same as never. Some airlines still allow fairly generous carry-on weight. Others are much stricter, especially outside the United States. That is why copying what worked on one airline and expecting it to work everywhere is such a dangerous habit. The rule is not universal. It changes by carrier route and fare type. So the smart move is not guessing. It is checking your airline's exact carry-on allowance before you leave home and weighing your bag fully packed, not half-packed. Because a bag that feels light when you lift it can still fail when the number appears on the scale. And once that happens, logic disappears fast. You are no longer calmly preparing for a trip. You are negotiating with your own luggage in public. That is why experienced travelers in 2026 are doing one simple thing. More often, they are packing lighter than they think they need to, not because they want less, because they want control. Number 3. Personal item rules and why small enough no longer means safe. A lot of travelers still think of the personal item as the easy part. A purse, a tote, a backpack, a laptop bag, something soft, flexible, and harmless looking, something no one will care about. That used to feel mostly true. But in 2026, airlines are paying much closer attention to the second bag, not just the first one. Why? Because when overhead bins fill up, every extra item starts to matter. And a personal item is only considered a personal item if it fits under the seat in front of you. Not partly, not diagonally, not after you force it down with your foot. It has to fit the way the airline intends. That is where many travelers get caught. They bring a backpack that looks modest enough, or a tote that seems soft enough to squeeze. But once it is packed with a sweater charger, snacks, paperwork, medicine, and a water bottle, it stops being a small personal item and starts becoming a second carry-on. And that is exactly how trouble begins at the gate. The issue is not just size, it is behavior. Airlines are looking at how much space each traveler is effectively taking on board. So even if your bag appears casual, bulky shape, overstuffed compartments and pockets sticking out can turn it into something that no longer qualifies. This matters even more for travelers who like to stay prepared. The very people who pack responsibly are often the ones who accidentally overbuild their personal item. So the safest habit is this: choose one bag that is clearly designed to fit under the seat and pack it like it will actually be checked visually. Because the personal item rule is no longer based on what feels reasonable to you. It is based on whether the airline sees that bag as truly belonging at your feet. And once they decide it does not, you may be forced to combine bags on the spot, pay extra, or surrender your calm before boarding even starts. Number 4. Lithium batteries and the carry-on rule that can derail a trip in seconds. This is one of the most misunderstood carry-on issues in modern travel and one of the fastest ways to create a problem at the airport. Because when it comes to lithium batteries, the question is not just what you packed. It is where you packed it. Many travelers still assume that if an item is common, it must be safe to toss into checked luggage. A power bank, a spare rechargeable battery, a device with a built-in battery. It all feels normal because these items are part of daily life now. But air travel does not judge them by how normal they feel. It judges them by fire risk. That is why spare lithium batteries and power banks are generally expected to go in carry-on bags, not checked bags. If a battery overheats or catches fire, cabin crew can respond much faster in the cabin than they can in the cargo hold. That single fact explains a rule that still surprises travelers every day. And this is where people get caught not with something dramatic, but with something ordinary. A forgotten power bank in a checked suitcase. A spare camera battery dropped into a side pocket. A smart bag with a built-in battery that cannot be removed quickly. A rechargeable device packed without thinking through how the rule applies. Then the bag is flagged. Security opens it. Time disappears. Stress rises. And suddenly, a routine trip becomes a public scramble over something the traveler never thought would matter. The emotional sting is real because it feels so preventable afterward. Not dangerous in the way people imagine, just non-compliant in the way airports increasingly enforce. So the lesson here is simple. Treat every battery-powered item as something that deserves a second look before you pack. Know which batteries are spare, which are installed, and whether any built-in battery can be removed if required. Because in 2026, battery rules are no longer just technical fine print. They are one of the quietest ways a traveler can lose time, money, and peace of mind before the trip even begins. Number 5. Smart luggage and why a convenient suitcase can suddenly become a problem. At first glance, smart luggage sounds like the perfect travel upgrade. Built-in charging, better convenience, less hassle at the airport. A suitcase that feels modern, practical, and designed for the way people actually travel now. And that is exactly why so many travelers are shocked when it becomes the problem. Because a smart bag is not judged by how useful it is. It is judged by the battery inside it. If that suitcase contains a non-removable lithium battery, many airlines will not allow it to be checked. And if the battery cannot be removed when asked, the bag itself can become non-compliant in a matter of seconds. That is the part people miss. They do not think of the suitcase as a battery-powered item. They think of it as luggage. But once a built-in power bank is part of the design, the rules change. What looked like a premium travel feature can suddenly trigger a last-minute argument at check-in or the gate. And airports are not built for slow fixes. You may be standing there trying to unzip compartments, find a hidden battery slot, search for a tool, or understand instructions you have never needed before while the line keeps moving and pressure keeps rising. That is why smart luggage creates such a frustrating kind of mistake. The traveler often did nothing reckless. They bought something marketed as helpful. They assumed travel-friendly meant airline-friendly. Those are not always the same thing. So before flying with smart luggage, the key question is not whether the bag is expensive, useful, or popular. It is whether the battery is removable, accessible, and acceptable under the airline's rules. Because once the answer is no, the convenience disappears instantly. The biggest mistake travelers make in 2026 is not ignorance. It is confidence built on old experience. They have flown before. They know how airports work. They have used the same bag, packed the same way, followed the same habits, and gotten through just fine. And that is exactly why these new enforcement patterns hit so hard. Because most people are not being caught by truly bizarre items or reckless choices. They are being caught by normal routines that no longer match a stricter system. A carry-on that is slightly too large. A personal item that became too full. A battery packed in the wrong place. A smart suitcase that is suddenly treated like a problem. A liquid container that looked harmless. A gift that cannot stay wrapped. Medication packed without enough protection or easy access. None of it sounds dramatic at home, But at the airport, small mistakes become public expensive and emotionally draining very quickly. That is the real lesson behind all of this. Travel is no longer only about what you bring. It is about how closely what you bring matches rules that are being enforced with less flexibility than before. And the travelers who move through airports with the least stress are not always the most experienced. Often, they are simply the most prepared for how the rules are actually applied now. So before your next trip, do one thing differently. Do not ask, "Will this probably be fine?" Ask, "If someone checks this carefully, will it still pass without a problem?" That one shift in thinking can save you from fees, delays, embarrassment, and the kind of last-minute panic that can overshadow an entire journey. Because in 2026, the smartest traveler is not the one who assumes. It is the one who checks before the airport does.